Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I am Lauren Della Russo, Director of Development for the Western States on the National Major Gifts team. I am delighted for you to meet Sue Gott, our campus planner, and get an overview of the new and recently completed facilities projects around campus. We'll also hear from faculty about the beautiful new Kinesiology and Ford Robotics buildings. Just a few housekeeping updates before we continue. Closed captioning is available using the transcript button on the bottom of your screen. And if you have any questions along the way, please submit them through the Q&A function on your screen. And now I'd like to introduce our donor hosts today, Ronald and Regina McNeil. Ronald and Regina have been wonderfully supportive volunteers for the university. Regina, a proud alumna of the University of Michigan School of Education, has served on the Education Dean's Advisory Council, and Ronald on the College of Engineering Dean's Advisory DEI Council. Both are members of the Lead Scholars Volunteer Council. We are so appreciative of their generous support and advocacy for Michigan. Ronald and Regina, welcome.
And good afternoon, everyone. Our foundation, we founded our foundation, the Ronald D. and Regina C. McNeil Foundation, in 2002. The foundation itself administers two flagship scholarship programs. The McNeil Scholar Program Detroit is exclusively for high school graduates of the Detroit Public Community School District, and the McNeil Scholar Program Lanai is for high school graduates of the Lanai High and Elementary School in Lanai City, Hawaii. We have also established several partnerships and endowments at the university. It includes the Alumni Association's Lead Scholar Program, the School of Education, and of course the athletic department. In 2019, we were awarded the prestigious Hermelin Award. Our inaugural endowment was with the College of Engineering. It was in honor of my late father, who, though trained and educated as an engineer, never was afforded the opportunity to work as one. Our commitment to engineering is in large part due to Dean Gallamore's visible commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. He's offering opportunities to people of color and women, opportunities that were never afforded my father.
That Dean Gallimore has created as part of an incredible vision that seeks not only to develop engineering and scientific practitioners, but global leaders as well. Dean Gallimore's vision for Michigan as a preeminent College of Engineering fits nicely with our support from the foundation in aggressive STEM education. I'm also involved in a business that seeks to develop and deliver ubiquitous mobility and clearly understand the key role that robotics will play in the personal and commercial mobility of the future. But to meet the Dean's vision, the College of Engineering needs the best facilities to attract and train future leaders. This gorgeous state-of-the-art Ford Motor Company robotics building is just one example. It is our honor to support and invest in Dean Gallimore's ambitious vision of preeminence, global leadership, and academic excellence, with, of course, a strong commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And now I would like to introduce Sue Gott. Sue has been guiding master planning for the University of Michigan campuses for 20 years. Sue is highly regarded for her focus on integrated planning, environmental stewardship, and alternative transportation. She oversees planning of major projects from buildings to parking structures to utilities to roads improvements, plazas, to open spaces and beyond. She is an advocate for public art and historic preservation. And she is also a very vital link in the coordinating project with our community partners. And I also hear that she is a delight to work with. Please welcome Sue Gott.
Well, wow, thank you. Regina and Ronald, that was such a kind introduction, and it's truly a privilege for me to be here today with all of you. I have to say it is a glorious day to be here in Ann Arbor, 90 degrees. I know you're all looking forward to the day when an event like this can be held in person, but in the interim, I'm really delighted to share some campus updates with each of you. And I hope that this will give you kind of an in-person look at our campus while we're here together today. As I was pulling together materials for today's discussion, I thought it might be helpful to begin by stepping back and providing an overview as well as some highlights of campus history that have shaped our environment today. Then I'd like to share a number of recently completed projects, as well as some that are still ongoing. As you can probably imagine, there's always more to cover than time allows. So this will be a fairly high-level overview in order to make our time together meaningful today. So here we go. As a quick reminder, we have 5 Ann Arbor campuses. Starting from the south and heading north, we have the Stephen M. Ross Athletic Campus. Next is the Central Campus, followed by the Medical Center Campus. And Central and Medical are actually contiguous, but across the river and further north is our North Campus, which is our largest campus. And finally, east of US 23 and in Ann Arbor Township is the East Medical Campus. We have a little over 3,000 acres in the Ann Arbor area, which includes our Radrick Farms Golf Course, our Botanical Gardens, our Tech Park. And between our 5 campuses, we have roughly 37 million gross square feet of building space. I also wanted to give you a quick history and sharing this timeline that has evolved over the last 200 years with some interesting planning milestones. Our original 40 acres on Central Campus were acquired in 1837. And by the end of the 19th century, both the athletic and the medical campuses were established. Then in the 1950s, the North Campus was established, and finally, our East Medical Campus in the early 1990s. But looking back on this timeline, what is not included, but is certainly relevant under today's circumstances, was the Spanish flu pandemic back in 1918. So our office did a little digging. We found that in October of 1918, the university provided some similar guidance to what we've experienced over the last 14 months, including avoiding crowds, maintain distances, and wear a mask, just like the one we found digging in our Bentley library. The governor had also prohibited large public gatherings and ordered large public meeting places to be closed. So what's also interesting for me is to observe that after the Spanish flu, the university really saw quite a resurgence in the 1920s. Central campus expansion included the addition of the Law Quad, the Michigan League, and Angel Hall. The Medical Center campus began with construction of a large Old Main Hospital in 25, and the athletic campus saw the construction of the Michigan Stadium and the Michigan Golf Course. Now, to be clear, I am not suggesting that we will see any similar swing after the pandemic, but looking back at history like this is a helpful context for us planners as we look out into the future. And it's fun stuff. So before I dive into campus projects, I did want to take just a moment and share at a personal level how really proud I am. I'm from Ann Arbor. I'm an alum, I taught here, and I'm a staff member. And I've just been really proud of how well we've responded and made adjustments during the early months of the pandemic last spring and summer. Our mission enabled us to nimbly pivot and bring innovation and creativity to all of those tough circumstances. We were able to keep our clinics functioning to help meet the medical needs of our most ill patients. Research activities resumed fairly quickly after the governor lifted the state's stay-at-home order. We quickly shifted classes to remote formats to maintain continuity and instruction for our students. And our transit system and other campus support services and operations were all maintained, all with very robust public health informed guidance. So for me, this has been the Michigan difference at its very core. So now I'm going to switch to our tour. And as I do that, I thought it would be helpful to note that there will be several mission-driven themes that you will see embedded in many of the projects I'll be showing you today. First, for example, enhancing campus life for our entire community. Our students, our faculty, staff, patients, and visitors remains a priority. It's critical to provide a physical environment that attempts to optimize instruction, research, clinical care, and the student experience. Second, our emphasis on robust environmental actions propel our enhancement of campus sustainability to boldly confront the climate crisis. After nearly a decade of environmental initiatives, the President convened a Commission on Carbon Neutrality, which we refer to as the PCCN, with the mission of contributing to a more sustainable and just world. And just this past March, the Commission submitted its final report and recommendations to the university to achieve a net zero greenhouse gas emissions. As one outcome, less than 3 weeks ago, we announced that approximately half of the electricity purchased in the Ann Arbor campus will soon come from Michigan-based renewable resources, largely due to the launch of 3 new wind energy parks. This is part of a renewable energy purchase agreement with DTE, which is going to help us meet our goal of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by 25%, which had been due in 2025, but we'll be able to meet that later this year. So 4 years ahead of our initial schedule. Third, our projects honor our history and our traditions, while also remaining flexible for future programmatic needs and innovations that we just can't possibly predict today. For example, you'll see a number of heritage buildings in my presentation that were renovated during the course of these last few years. And finally, we continue to focus on opportunities to strengthen connectivity within our campuses, between our campuses, and across the community and the world at large. And now, more than ever before, even these virtual connections have been essential for events like this one. So with all of this as a background, now let's begin the tour, and I'll be starting on Central Campus. The Michigan Union held its grand reopening ceremony last January. Now, I want to point out that this is an image taken before the pandemic, like many you'll be seeing in this presentation today, where no one will be wearing masks or social distancing. This was an extraordinary transformation that brings new life into a 100-year-old building, reasserting itself as a vibrant social hub that fosters collaboration. One of the most dramatic changes is the enclosure of the courtyard, which now offers year-round performance and event spaces. Significant changes to the LS&A building were also unveiled last year. The first floor renovation and addition on the west side of the building, which faces into Regents Plaza, which you may know is where the Cube is located, provides a welcoming, vibrant, student-focused interaction space with new meeting rooms, study rooms, office spaces for a variety of co-located student services. This is really a terrific example of a project that supports our academic mission. We're also very proud of the Trotter Multicultural Center, named after the African-American civil rights activist. This is another vibrant hub on our central campus for students. The award-winning space with brightly colored furniture surrounded by abstract art, mural, and historic photography is designed to be an inclusive environment where students of any cultural identity can celebrate and foster Michigan's diversity in a way that's more inclusive and visible. Next, the new biological science building is playing a key role in meeting the university's academic and research missions. This is just truly a remarkable new facility which successfully puts science on display and demonstrates collaboration by bringing scientific instruction and research together with our Museum of Natural History. In the upper left corner of the image, you'll see that students are watching live research, and there's actually an intercom to increase interaction between the viewers and the researchers. Well, the building just begs you to go around each corner and explore ongoing research activities and museum exhibits, including the only place in the world where you can see a mastodon couple side by side. I think this is just really a must stop on your next trip to the campus. Another important project is the ongoing renovation and expansion of our dental building, which will expand the school's facilities for teaching, serving patients, and conducting research. The multi-phase project is being coordinated carefully so the building can remain open and operational for patients and students while construction is going on. Common areas and flexible and collaborative research spaces for our faculty and our students will be located in the courtyard addition, which I'm showing in light blue in the upper right of the screen. Okay, now before I move on to the next project, I'd like to emphasize how incredibly different students learn today from past generations. Well, yes, this image might exaggerate the contrast, but the image on the right was actually created by one of my former interns to convey her interpretation of what it means to be plugged in. So as instruction has evolved to be more team-based and action learning focused, and I know there were a number of questions about this and collaboration received earlier, and contemporary spaces have needed to become more technology-rich environments. Our academic mission is driving us to provide more relevant and appropriate physical spaces. So the future Central Campus Classroom building is a fantastic example. It will bring over 1,400 new classroom seats to campus when it opens next January, which will have a positive impact on student instruction at Michigan for decades. The rendering in the upper right shows what the new future classroom building will look like when it's finished. It's designed to accommodate a collaborating environment for teaching and learning, as shown in the lower image. We're also renovating a real treasure next door, the Ruthven building, which you can see on the left. Now, with our museums relocated just north to the new Biological Sciences building, the renovated Ruthven space will accommodate administrative offices, academic and research initiatives, and feature a new 200-person multi-classroom. Next, and when you come to Ann Arbor, you may want to stop at the Alumni Center with its recently completed new facility, including a new, more inviting entrance off Ingalls Mall. Now daylight pours into the lower level lobby area, making spaces more inviting, with a number of interior improvements, including enhanced circulation throughout the building, greater workspaces, and more capacity for the staff. Another important mission-driven project is the recently completed renovation and addition for the new home of Kinesiology. And this is the first time that the entire school will be under one roof. You'll be hearing much more about this exciting project later from Dean Ploutz-Snyder. The Detroit Observatory is another cherished historic resource that at the time it was built helped transform the university into one of the country's first research institutions. So we're just thrilled that the classroom addition will help transform the observatory into a destination linking the university's history of scientific study to the present and beyond. The addition will include a flexible, multi-use classroom, a new entrance now off Observatory, and a reception and support space. I couldn't resist sharing this gem. The floodlights of Burton Tower were recently replaced with LED lights that now brilliantly illuminate the tower and its carillon from within. The new lighting offers opportunities for creative expressions for university events, activities, and special announcements. And since I didn't know if you'd seen the image before, I thought it was stunning, so I wanted to make sure to include it. The work was completed a few years ago in celebration with our university's bicentennial, and it was fully funded by gifts with an endowment for ongoing operational expenses as well. And finally, before we leave Central Campus, our central power plant, which stands proud at the corner of Huron and Washtenaw with its landmark stacks, is being expanded to enhance reliability of power needed to support our programs. This is a cogeneration plant, and the expansion, which is part of the university's ongoing transition toward carbon-free alternative energy sources and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, was originally recommended by the President's 2015 Greenhouse Gas Reduction Committee. So now let's move on to Michigan Medicine, located at the Medical Center. The Future Clinical Inpatient Tower is the latest project in Michigan Medicine's strategy to deliver extraordinary patient care. It will offer over 250 flexible patient rooms that can be converted as needed to intensive care rooms also. And it will be able to accommodate 100 rooms that are currently beds in the existing university hospital, so that when Michigan Medicine's inpatient beds are all completed with this new facility, they will have all single private rooms. Creating this new patient care program, which emphasizes improved access to clinical neuroscience and cardiac care needs together, will enhance our ability to better respond to complex cases and to deliver state-of-the-art treatments. So it's important to understand that while our acute inpatient care is located at the Medical Center campus, we've recently also completed several outpatient facilities to deliver ambulatory service closer to our patients. One of these is located west of Ann Arbor and another one just north in the city of Brighton. Now, as I transition to North Campus, continuing on with our tour, I thought this was a terrific snapshot of the recently transformed Gerstacker Grove. The improved central open space is a vibrant and dynamic student destination and a real iconic central space for the campus. Our first stop is the new dance building, which is just nearing the end of construction. It's located south of the Brem Pavilion at the Moore Building, and it will house the newly relocated Department of Dance from Central Campus when it opens in the fall. The new facility will include a 100-seat performance venue, dance studios, locker rooms, and administrative spaces. I think it's just going to invigorate and highlight dance at Michigan and bring the School of Music, Theater, and Dance's creative community together to really unleash some very exciting cross-disciplinary activity. Heading west, we're now stopping at 2 autonomous vehicle test sites, one for vehicles in the air and the other for vehicles that are on the ground. You might remember earlier when I was describing themes, one of my themes talked about historic resources and the importance of honoring our history and our legacy while also remaining flexible for future programmatic needs and technology that we can't predict today. Well, these are 2 projects that are really good examples of projects that likely 10 or 20 years ago we would not have been able to predict. M-City, shown on the left, is leading the transition to a new world of connected and autonomous vehicles. It's the world's first controlled environment of its kind. And the research being conducted is helping to advance transportation safety, sustainability, and accessibility. MAR on the right is an outdoor fly lab that allows for safe testing of autonomous aerial vehicles in realistic wind, lighting, and sensor conditions. And right next door to MAR is a new building, and I know that this is a very special one for Ronald and Regina. The new Ford Motor Company Robotics building, which is made possible in part by a generous gift from the Ford Motor Company. It's a very innovative project, not only because of the remarkable research that's taking place, but also because Ford Motor Company is both a tenant and has researchers who are collaborating with our researchers. And you'll be hearing much more about this project from Damen Provost with the Robotics Institute in another few minutes. Our last stop on North Campus is the future new transportation facility. This building, which is going to be under construction in just a couple of weeks, will replace many services and functions for our existing facility that is currently located on the Ross Athletic Campus, and which is more than 40 years old. Being able to finally accommodate articulated and electric buses in the future will help decrease overall carbon emissions of the transit fleet. And just as important, the move of this facility to North Campus, which is where our bus routes begin, will reduce overall university greenhouse gas emissions from our bus fleet operations by 5 hours of operations each day. In addition to being an important project that aligns with our sustainability goals, it's also a fantastic example of a project that's helping us to strengthen and improve the physical connectivity across our campus. Another one of the themes I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation today. So the last campus we're touring is the Ross Athletic Campus. Located on South State Street, south of our Michigan Golf Course, is the new Ross Athletic Campus South Complex, which was completed in 2017 and now adds an indoor and outdoor track, a lacrosse stadium, and a performance center. This complex allows the university to host home, regional, and new national competition opportunities. And students who are participating in some of our recreation sports also have access to these spaces. Here are just a few images that really show what cutting edge spaces are here. The new Lacrosse Stadium in the upper left can accommodate about 2,000 spectators. Just below is the indoor hydraulic track and field, which can host up to 500 spectators. And the remaining three images on the right are from our Sports Performance Center, which includes both specialized team spaces, such as the unique indoor rowing tanks shown at the bottom of the screen, and other shared resources. And finally, the new Postuma Family Clubhouse at our Michigan Golf Course is another recently completed project for the athletic department. And if you come to campus looking for it, it's practically on the same footprint as the old clubhouse. The new facility meets the more contemporary needs of this program, and it has helped to resolve a number of deficiencies that existed with our former structure. So I know we're near our time, and I am going to wrap up. I'd like to just offer in closing that while some of us may be working, learning, teaching, and even touring remotely like we are today, I know that we're all looking forward to seeing one another again on our physical campus. You may already know that President Schlissel recently announced that most classes are expected to be taught in person this fall, and that there will be greater occupancy in our resident halls. As such, we will be able to once again enjoy the history and traditions of the university past, experience its extraordinary vibrancy, and to celebrate all of the world-class programs that maintain Michigan's position as leaders and best. Again, Ronald and Regina, thank you so much for including me today, and you, Lauren, as well. And now it's just my great pleasure to introduce the Dean of the School of Kinesiology, Dr. Lori Ploutz-Snyder.
Hi, thank you for that great introduction. And I am going to tell you more about the new School of Kinesiology building project. And we're going to start with a short 2-minute video that will take you inside the building. Kinesiology here at Michigan is a rapidly growing area, and so we had outgrown our existing spaces. And the decision had been made so that we were going to come into this building, the previous Krause building.
It took my breath away. It's gorgeous and spacious, and we're right on the diag.
The School of Kinesiology originally was in 3 separate buildings across campus, and now finally everyone is together under one roof in what was originally the Natural Science building.
What U of M does with a lot of our buildings, they keep the history in the exterior, but they bring us up to state of the art on the inside. So we're kind of having the best of both worlds when we come onto campus.
Albert Kahn designed some beautiful buildings like Angel Hall, Hill Auditorium, Burton Tower, and there are many others. So the Kahn buildings are typically very sturdy looking buildings, you know, so the detailing of the exterior is beautiful, but once you enter the building, it was pretty dark. One of the unique features of this building is really large windows. There are studies that show that people perform better if they're exposed to light. And thankfully, Albert Kahn, 100 years ago, thought about that as well. Our skylight is actually a plastic membrane, which is fairly new on our campus. We kind of took out everything from the center of the building. So what this allowed us to do is place this concrete ring that went into the center, allowed us to get classrooms on every level. The other half of the infill is now an atrium, kind of a common space. This project was calling for these large specialty labs. And so we had to put them on the lower level. So kind of stacking the building was unique.
When you walk in on the second floor and there's that huge open space, I love how bright it is.
Everything's white in this building, so I think that helps a lot, and it definitely makes it just like more cheerful.
Throughout the building, on the walls and murals are deconstructed people. My favorite is probably the carpet in the commons. If you go up high and look down, you can see that it's actually a deconstructed swimmer with waves.
We have evolved for, over 125 years to become one of the fastest growing schools on campus. It's taken decades and 3 deans for us to get to this one unified state-of-the-art place that we can call home.
It is particularly rewarding to walk through with someone and see their excitement when they come into the building and see the new spaces. And now, maybe more than any time in history, it makes it easy to be optimistic about the future. And we all need some of that right now.
Thanks, everybody. The one reason I want to show that video is because we get a nice description of the building from our campus planners. We also hear from students, faculty, and staff. And I want to spend my next few minutes telling you a little bit more about what kinesiology is and what our thoughts were for the design of some of the buildings. So kinesiology is the study of the science and business behind exercise and physical activity, sports, health, and wellness. The way that our bodies move, or in some cases don't move, influences really everything that we do. Physical activity and exercise can help prevent disease, can promote physical and mental well-being, and increase the health of communities and societies. Also, sport impacts our communities both culturally and economically. It can be used to bring people together, inspire philanthropy and social justice, but it also drives regional, national, and international financial growth. We have a variety of degree programs in kinesiology. We have both undergraduate and graduate degrees. We have undergraduate degrees in applied exercise science, movement science, and sport management, with over 1,000 undergraduate students, making us one of the larger undergraduate enrollments on campus. And we have graduate programs in athletic training, as well as masters and PhDs, both in movement science and sport management. And one reason I tell you this is so that you can get an idea of the breadth of the programs of what kinesiology is, to understand why this building is going to really take things to the next level. I also like to mention that this year, for the first time ever, we were rated the #1 graduate program by the National Academy of Kinesiology. If you move on to our research programs, we have about 25 labs and centers that focus really on all things health, physical activity, exercise, and the business of sport. Our faculty also provide leadership and support for university initiatives such as the Michigan Concussion Center and the Exercise and Sport Science Initiative. The breadth of our research really spans everything from social science work to your classic wet lab, bench science, and everything in between, with community physical activity, injury prevention and rehabilitation. And this was the impetus for needing a new building that was completely redesigned, that had all of these research needs met together. And we're also really proud of the breadth of our donor base that helped contribute to make this building possible, is as wide as the breadth of our research. And so we had everyone from recent graduates, alumni, parents, and industry partners who really helped make this project possible for us. If you go on to the next slide, Sue mentioned that this is the first time that the school will be all under one roof, and we're really excited for that. You can see that we were spread out over 3 buildings, and we are now, for the first time, all in one building. We're really very excited about that, and it provides us the opportunity to really expand the number of classrooms that we have, as well as provide us with some room for growth. And as Sue was mentioning earlier, our building, along with all of the campus capital projects now, is really trying to achieve high standards for sustainability. And we were very proud to take a 100-year-old building to LEED Gold status. If we take a trip into the spaces themselves, one of the things I wanted to talk with you about and follow up a little bit more with what Sue said is this active learning. So we have some active learning classrooms in this building, and this is really critical to student learning. There is research that shows that engaging students in learning through activities, discussions, projects, and doing, not just passive listening lecture style, really promotes not only better student learning, but also student success. And so these rooms, as you can see here in the picture, have a lot of projectors, so they're quite high tech, but they also have movable furniture so that you can configure the room for any sort of activity. If you look at the inset on the bottom right, it shows an athletic training class from just this past semester. And the idea here is that students can break up into pairs, they can demonstrate, and then they can go back to the seats and have lecture, and it provides for a much more stimulating environment. If you go on to the next slide, you can see a standard classroom. And the reason I put this one in here is to show you that all of the classroom furniture in these new buildings is very flexible. So you can see tables and chairs on wheels. They're still very sturdy and very comfortable, but the classrooms can be configured and reconfigured quickly and set up for whatever the instructor needs to set them up for. And this really provides a lot of flexibility in our classrooms and also the new classroom buildings to be flexible and nimble to all of the things that we're doing now, and even possible to do things that we haven't yet envisioned. We also have a distance learning classroom, and this is really critical, especially in our sport management program, to connect students with others all around the country and really all around the world. This is much better even than Zoom calls, because the room is set up with excellent audio and video to really connect our networks all around the world. Our next classroom space here is what we call a class lab. We have 6 of these, and these have specialized equipment based on the subject. So the one pictured here is an anatomy lab. But the idea here is, again, that students can have a mix of lab and lecture classroom teaching. So it's another form of active learning, but they're rooms that can have specialized equipment and multiple projectors and be customized for teaching a certain type of area. So we have these for biomechanics, anatomy, exercise physiology, things like that. On the next slide is a wet lab suite, and this is mostly a research-based area where our faculty are conducting all sorts of research related to the health benefits of physical activity for people with diabetes, obesity, and a number of other conditions. Down on the first floor, and this was the area that Diana in the video was showing you was dug out in the central courtyard, we have several biomechanics labs. And so these are unique facilities that allow our faculty to look at and teach about the interface between the bio and the mechanics. So how people move, they have force plates embedded in the floors and camera systems to track movement. The inset picture here was from pre-COVID, so that's why they're not wearing masks, where our faculty and our students look at how people with prostheses walk, how people recover from stroke, anything related to movement and analyzing that movement, so the science of movement. The next slide shows our neuroscience research suite with a variety of, again, specialized equipment for studying EEG and all sorts of electrical signals. Our last space that I'll show you is a clinical exercise research suite. And this is essentially both a gym with exam rooms. So think of doctor's offices next to gyms so that we can do procedures affiliated with exercise. So people can exercise, come back in a procedure room, have a blood sample, a muscle biopsy, whatever, and return back. And this is used for both teaching and research. And lastly, our academic and career advising suite. This is really special for the School of Kinesiology because I like to call it one-stop shopping. You come on your classes, and on the same floor with the classes are our academic advisors, but also our career advisors. And so all of this located in one space. And with that, I'd like to say thank you, and I hope to welcome you to our new Commons as soon as possible for some really nice events. And it is my pleasure to introduce Damen Provost from the Robotics Institute to give you a tour inside that special facility.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today. And I really wanted to lead off our presentation, kind of how we lead off all of our presentations, with our value statement. This is really how we designed the building, was based off our values. I'm going to show that throughout the presentation, but the idea of robotics with respect and integrity with action, kind of our two flanks here. It's what drew our roboticists together. We started, Michigan has been doing robotics for 40 something years, but it's been in these silos. And it was really in 2012 when there was, a critical mass of people that said, I like robotics, you like robotics, she likes robotics, let's start doing this together. They wrote a white paper, and the two big recommendations were start a grad program and build a building. So we started our grad program in 2014 with a PhD and master's in robotics. We're ranked number 2 now in the nation. And then we just opened up the Ford Motor Company robotics building just this year. So these are things that we really strive for. And when you see the building, it's designed around transparency. There's always some hesitancy when people think about robotics and the robotic apocalypse and all these kind of negative connotations. We want them to be able to come inside and see, it's not scary. They can see what our research are doing hands-on. And one of the central pillar here is this idea of enthusiastic outreach. We think we created this word tourability when we created our building. The labs are all glass. They're meant for Mr. and Mrs. Smith's class to be able to come in and take a look inside. And sometimes there's lots of interesting things going on with robotics. And sometimes it's kind of like watching paint dry, but it's a way for students in the community and kind of everyone to be able to come into this one central place here. Now, the last 15 months have been tough for our folks. We've had this bottled up enthusiasm. And last week, we actually got to do our first kind of outreach participant with 2 of our favorites. We had Dean Gallimore and President Schlissel. They got to come down and take a tour of the building here, and you'll see them inside, actually the Ronald and Regina McNeil Walking Laboratory, getting a little tour of Digit, which is one of our biped robots by Grant and Wami, 2 of our robotics students. So they were kind of our first customers, and we really are looking forward to having everyone else come and visit us as soon as you can. I'm going to go in and show you a little bit of a video to give us a little demonstration about what we do here.
This building here is going to give us the venue from which to both engage those students, build that community, give them a sense of values that will help shape society for the better, and then be able to carry that forward into the world.
I am Jesse Grizzle, director of the Michigan Robotics Institute, and I'm standing right in front of our Ford Motor Company robotics building. This building is going to allow us to bring all of the roboticists on campus together. In addition, we have Ford Motor Company on the 4th floor.
I think the facilities themselves are unique in that there's so many different labs that allow walking, running, flying, jumping, rehabilitation, bays for full-size cars. All of that put together allows somebody like me who's normally in aerospace to see cutting-edge self-driving car technology.
So the Michigan Robotics Building has robotics education in mind. We have dedicated facilities for our robotic systems laboratory course at the graduate level. We have undergraduate lab facilities to facilitate both first-year courses and also upper-level courses so that students can be inspired from the first day that they walk on campus all the way through their entire experience.
Our co-location really allows us to bring a very diverse workforce from both sides together, and we can work on joint projects, both academic and production-oriented, that just make something special.
I think robots in the future are going to be systems that integrate advanced computer science, the AI, the networking, the databases, the edge and cloud computing resources with the mechanical devices in a holistic system that is working with people. It's not replacing people, it's working with people. And I think in the future, we're going to get a society, not just in this building, but outside this building, that appreciate the value of having these robotic devices every day in our lives.
I think we have the chance to become the #1 group in the nation in this area, and we will set milestones for research, collaboration, climate, and education.
So those last words were by Jesse Grizzle. He's the director of robotics, and we really think that's true. We think that this building gives us a leg up on pretty much anyone else in the world. When we moved in, we brought faculty that were scattered all across campuses. We, unpacked our last box, well, kind of, in the last week. We moved in from 23 different buildings on North Campus, Central Campus. We work with kinesiology. We work with the med school. We work with the School of Information. We're centered in engineering, but it's really a vibrant group that kind of came together in this building. We have this nice large atrium filled with light, and the students really love it because we actually have our own cafe down here, the Eigen Cafe. We're making our elevators smart elevators, so you're going to be able to come visit us, order a cappuccino from the 2nd floor, and then have the robot summon the elevator, coming up and deliver it to you wherever you are in your lab, in a conference room. Here in our collaboration area. This is the Kiva Collaboration Corridor. So all of our labs open up into this shared space, and then all of our faculty and staff offices are over here. So we kind of built in this mixing area for all of our students, staff, and researchers to kind of come together in one big area here. It's really kind of a unique and amazing place. It's also the first place where there are Ford engineers that are sitting up on the 4th floor of this building. So we own the bottom 3 floors of here, and then Ford is up top. And so it's really kind of a special thing for us. I'm going to do a quick tour of it virtually. So we have this cool VR model. So as we come through, we open up into the atrium here, that cafe is there. We come into the Ronald and Regina McNeil walking laboratory where we have this really cool treadmill that can go 30 miles an hour. It can tilt up 20 degrees, and actually you can see these little obstacles that we can put on it. So the robots actually have to jump over it. We do drone testing in our indoor flight lab. This is right next to that M-Air, which Sue mentioned earlier in the presentation. We're right down the street from M-City as well, so we get to have a lot of overlap with their facilities. We do robot rehabilitation, prosthetics, exoskeletons here as well, very similar to what they have down in kinesiology. We have high bays for our autonomous vehicles. Ford has their own high bay as well, so we'll bring our big cars in here. And we have student teams and maker spaces. We really think that students should be able to build algorithmically through software and hardware. So we're kind of bringing shop back into the equation as we build out this building. So there's a lot of ways for our students to kind of get their hands dirty. And we think that's an important way. We like to say that simulations are doomed to succeed. And so having the ability to go in and really see how these things can be built, where things can go wrong is important to us. I want to highlight a couple of the features that we have in this building. One is the Mars Yard. So this is a kind of a unique thing on the east side of the building. We have these Mars rover teams that like to go out into the deserts of Utah, which is a good kind of stand-in for Mars. They dig out there and they wanted a place they could test their vehicle out here. It just so happens that we have an expert in Martian soil, Milton Renno, who's in our Climate and Space Department. We went to his office with like 10 bags of red dirt, and he was like a Russian or a Martian sommelier, where he kind of said, you know, here's, take 10% of this dirt, 40% of that dirt, and mix in another little bit, and you get the right blend of it. And then we also work with JPL, and so they kind of came up with like the dimensions, things to do, things not to do out in this this Mars Yard area, so we can take our rovers out there in a safe and controlled area and give them this real obstacle course. On the other side of the building is our robot garden. So Matias Del Campo here is one of our faculty members in architecture. He wanted to use AI to design a feature for this. And we wanted a cool area to test our robots. We go out in the wave field a lot. We go out into, you know, really where people are going to be. And so we wanted to build something that would be representative of that last kind of 10 foot for our delivery robots here. And so Alexa Carlson, she built a neural network that actually she trained with satellite data, with images of robots, with all these parameters, and this neural network spit out this design for a playground here. So we like to say it's a playground for robots designed by robots. And it's actually even has a water feature here that we're able to use. So we're really excited to have this here. And kind of the last thing I want to highlight here is that in addition to the research component of this, we are really looking at how we do education. So this building has brought folks like Chad Jenkins, Jesse Grizzle, and Mani Ghaffari from 3 different departments to develop a brand new way of looking at introduction engineering. So they just won the Provost Teaching Award for this new computational linear algebra. Our uniform idea is that this talent is uniformly distributed, but opportunity is not. They build out this class so you could be someone from a tech school in Detroit or someone from the best charter school in New York City, and you could come in and be on kind of the same footprint. You didn't have to take a bunch of AP calculus to be able to do well in this class. So we piloted this. We partnered with Morehouse in Spelman down in Atlanta, and they had a bunch of their students that they brought on remotely. So we were really excited to bring this. So, you know, it's a building that's brought all these people and all these ideas together, and we're really kind of excited to be able to have it here. And with that, I think we're going to switch over to a little presentation or a Q&A with the panel. So I'm going to stop sharing here. And Lauren?
Yes, that's precisely right. Well, what a tremendous display of excellence on our campus today. Thank you all for sharing, and we'll get to some of the questions that we received. All right, the first question is, in addition to the President's Commission on Carbon Neutrality, what have been some of the university's other environmental initiatives?
I'll go ahead and take that one, Lauren, if that's okay.
Thank you, Sue.
Sure.
Sounds great.
As I mentioned, we have had 10 years of various committee work and initiatives. More than 50% of our capital projects have either received a LEED rating of either gold, silver, platinum, or they're pending. Our facilities have a great deal of energy conservation, water conservation, more efficient HVAC systems. And then I mentioned some of these larger initiatives like our central power plant, which was a recommendation back in 2015, as well as solar panels that you'll see on North Campus. So there's work we've done with water quality really across the board. And I think the PCCN is just taking us to a new level with a series of really extraordinary recommendations.
That's great. Thank you for answering that, Sue. Another question is, how do facilities encourage and foster collaboration for students and faculty? I feel like Damon could maybe start us off, and then if Sue, you wanted to contribute too, that'd be great.
For sure. So, you know, our building, you know, we really think that the research element is so important to what the students do. So we have kind of baked into our program research components. You know, we like to give students robots that are really representative. They might not cost $100,000 like an autonomous vehicle. With a $200 robot kit, you can really get all the sensing, reasoning, and acting that a big expensive robot can do. And then they're able to go out into these research labs and work. They do the research with our folks, and we get a lot of students kind of retained and attracted to us via research. We had one student, she was from the School of Music, but she worked in one of our research labs as an undergrad, and she came and worked for us as now a PhD student. And those kind of connections wouldn't happen unless you had this really important research component to it.
That's great. So thank you for sharing, Damon. What percentage of the budget for maintaining current infrastructure, and what do the 5- and 10-year plans look like for new and or replacement buildings? I'll hand that over to Sue.
Sure. Well, we, the regents approve a budget each year. And this, in fact, today is a regents meeting. And the plans that we have are what get approved by our regents. We do have master plans that are on file. And I think we were going to send out a link to the Architecture, Engineering, and Construction website, which shows some of our published past master plans. And I think with the new President's Commission on Carbon Neutrality and an interest in planning, we will kind of look forward to see what those plans might be coming in the next 5 or 10 years. I think there certainly is an opportunity for some shift in the planning process to be very robust. And we really look forward to see what might be even announced by our president.
Great, thank you, Sue. The next question is for Lori. I'm delighted that Krauss, an important historic building designed by industrial designer Albert Kahn, could accommodate the needs. When Krauss was first suggested to you, did you have concerns? And if so, how were they addressed?
Yes, I had concerns because the original format of the building was really choppy and dark. It's a very deep and thick building, but there wasn't natural light penetration beyond this corridor of offices. And it seemed nothing like what a hands-on collaborative group like Kinesiology would possibly use. And so I was really worried about it. And my concerns were alleviated quickly after talking with our own university AEC group and the architecture group, the architects that were designing the building, to really point out that this was going to be a transformative renovation of an old building. And I very quickly went from pretty nervous to really excited, because I love the idea of the historic exterior and the beautiful Kahn architecture with a new and modern interior that could be built out just for our exact needs. And it is now, I think, going to be one of the more collaborative spaces on campus for a wide variety of reasons. So great question.
That's great. Coming up next, what is the status of the CCRB demolition and replacement?
I will take that one. Great question. Folks may know that that was a project that has gone through an original approval, but it was put on hold. It was only approval to hire an architect, and that was several years ago. We go through several approvals. And when the pandemic came and the financial impacts of the pandemic impacted really all of our projects, and then we had the stay at home. During all of that time, that is a project that was put on pause, and that has not yet come off pause. So we'll continue to wait and see where that will go in the future.
Fantastic. Are there plans to connect North Campus with Central Campus?
Well, I get that question quite a bit, and we actually have in our 2008 master plan a connector between the campuses. We see that same desire in the recent President's Commission from Carbon Neutrality report, the March report. But right now, the connectivity is really coming from our transit system and the new vehicles that will be able to operate once the new facility is completed. And then as far as other technology, whether there would be some other piece of infrastructure that would connect our campuses, again, I think that's another recommendation within that report that we'll just have to see how and when and if there's action in response to the recommendation.
Could I jump in too? I mean, I think there's been a lot of cool things that, you know, from a research and autonomy perspective that have rolled out into the commercial sector. So we have, you know, if you come to Ann Arbor, you'll come and see, you know, robot taxis driving around. You'll see May Mobility, which is one of the autonomous shuttle startups. You'll see spin scooters going up and down Fuller, you know, that beat some of the car traffic as well. So there's been a lot of, you know, kind of the startup mentality that has come to Ann Arbor that really has, you know, since I've been here for only 9 years, brought that distance between Central and North Campus down a lot.
Great. Now, do these additions and improvements provide for additional students to be enrolled, or do they largely improve the education experience?
Lori, do you want to start with that one?
I will. So I'll say, if I had to give a quick answer, I would say that they enhance the student experience with a little asterisk. And that is all of the units, not all of the units, many of the units on campus would like to have more students as there are more buildings. They think that they could accommodate more students, but the campus is pretty full nearly at capacity, I understand, with respect to the infrastructure, not so much the classrooms and the teachers, but the busing and the dining halls and the places to live and all of those things. And so we're really trying to get very creative with using some of our summer capacity. So the campus isn't terribly busy in the summer for those of you who've been here. And so a lot of the deans and academic leaders are trying to put our heads together to find a way to use the summer in creative new ways that would allow us to expand the number of students who can take advantage of these great opportunities here.
Yeah, the summer use is a really great point. Thank you for highlighting that. And there are some units that have seen growth, but also we have buildings that have been a win-win. Krause is such a great example. It was a facility that had some renovation needs. It's a very large building. We had a unit that wanted to be co-located. And so we were really able to address the school's needs and the building needs. And what's quite fascinating is, gosh, I don't know, Lori, maybe 15 years ago, the same thing happened when the School of Kinesiology moved into our former Observatory Lodge. So we do see that continuum of trying to modernize our facilities and then at the same time respond to limited growth where that might be from particular units or schools.
Thank you, Sue and Lori. So this next question is for Sue. Sue, when you were showing us the clinical inpatient tower, you commented that all the rooms will be designed to serve multiple and changing needs, all the way to intensive care. Is this a smart pandemic-informed plan to embed overflow capacity in a variety of campus locations?
Wow. Well, that's a fascinating question. First of all, let me just clarify that it will be 250 beds, which include absorbing 100 beds that are currently at the university hospital. Those 100 beds are currently part of doubles. And so part of what we're doing with the clinical inpatient tower is eliminating rooms with 2 people to end up with these private rooms. So the 250 will all be private. But I did say that they have flexibility so that if there are more critical care needs, that they can be modified as intensive care. I think the question about the pandemic is, gosh, you know, depends on what kind of a pandemic, I suppose, right? And so they certainly are designed for very ill patients. But having a crystal ball and knowing what sort of pandemics could come again maybe is a little bit difficult for me to anticipate.
Yes. Great, thanks, Sue. So could we also discuss the plans for replacement or renovations of Markley as the medical campus expands?
Sure. 2 years ago, I think, I made a public presentation to the Board of Regents. And during that meeting, we had a conversation about the best use of Markley in the future. And as that building reaches the end of its useful life, it may be better serving our healthcare mission than our residential needs. And so there are no plans currently to demolish the building and convert it to a health system need or a Michigan medicine need. But we do imagine from a land use planning perspective that at some point in time, if and when the board were to decide to create a project to relocate beds from the current site of the Markley building, that site probably would be great future expansion for the Michigan Medicine Enterprise.
Fantastic. And today, this is the last question. Do you have a long-term 10, 20, 30-year master plan for ongoing facility development?
Yeah, thank you. You know, I just want to reiterate that master planning was actually one of the recommendations that are included in the PCCN report. And it's really been a central focus of President Schlissel, and I know he is continuing to make announcements about actions that will be coming from that report. And since master planning would be initiated with a very strong engagement process and with a focus on carbon neutrality, it's certainly something that at some point seems it will be initiated, and we very much look forward to that. But of course, like you, all of you on the screen and listening, we really have to continue to listen to our leadership and see what announcements, and there are again so many recommendations in that report. Master planning is definitely one of them, but there are a number of things recommended. So we all have to sit and wait and see.
That's great. Well, thank you, Sue, Damon, and Lori for showing us the great things happening on our vibrant and beautiful campus. I also want to thank Regina and Ronald McNeil for hosting us today, and for all of you for taking the time out of your busy days to join us. Please take good care and stay well through the summer. We look forward to more opportunities like this one, and hopefully someday soon gathering in person again. Thank you, and go blue.
Bye, everyone. Good to see you.
Bye.